Hello, HT Wingnut here. I thought I'd give a brief tutorial because I know several NBR users were interested in knowing how to improve the cooling in their Clevo w230st laptops. So this is, I guess, my recommendation. Not the only way to do it, but seems to have worked for me. So I'll take you through step by step and hopefully help you out. To start, you're going to want to get a program called Intel XTU, or Extreme Tuning Utility. It's free, so just Google for it, Intel XTU, and then should be the first link there. I can put a link to it in the YouTube comments there, but once you get there, it's the latest one is version 4.1. You don't have to select operating system or anything. It's for all of them, and I think it doesn't always give you the best choices here anyways if you do select OS. So go ahead and download that. Once you download it, go ahead and install it. It'll probably ask you to reboot after you do. After you reboot, go ahead and start it up, and this should be the screen you have. I have an i7 4800MQ CPU, so this is probably what you should see if you have that CPU. Otherwise it'll be a little bit different depending on what you have. But there's only a few things of interest to see here, at least that you want to worry about. One of them is the dynamic CPU voltage offset. Basically what we're going to look at doing is undervolting the CPU, which will do a couple things for us. One, will let it run cooler. Secondly, it will also let us run faster because it will allow the CPU to run faster because it is cooler, so it doesn't approach the TDP and start throttling. So the other thing you're interested in are the multipliers. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 active cores, and that's the multiplier we'll use depending on how many threads or active cores there are. That's the stock setting. Now, you could really, what you're going to want to worry about is the 3 and 4 active cores, because having 3 to 4 active cores, basically that's where you're going to probably encroach your TDP. So that's where you're going to want to worry about changing those values. But to start, we will look at the stock setting. There is a stress test built into Intel XTU, and that's CPU stress test. All you have to do is click Start Testing, and there's some data down here. You can see CPU temperature, utilization, processor frequency, a little bit more, pretty much the same data over here. Active core count is about the one unique thing over here that we want to look at. I'll go ahead and start testing. It's got a timer up here. And you can see the processor frequency goes down to 3.2 gigahertz. So when we looked at the multipliers, with 4 cores active, it should be up to 3.5 with boost. But because it's exceeded its TDP, it's running at a slower speed. I won't run this too long, but you can see over here you've got 4 active cores, 100% CPU utilization. It doesn't say any throttling, but I'm not sure when that activates. Back over here you got the same data, basically CPU temp, CPU utilization, and processor frequency. I'll go ahead and stop this test. We'll go back to our controls, and what we'll do now is we will change the dynamic CPU voltage offset. We'll go to negative numbers. Now, just to let you know, when you do this, every CPU is different, every computer is different, so you're going to have to find the sweet spot on your system. And in doing so, as you tune, you're going to run into hard lockups, reboots, blue screens, whatever, until you find that sweet spot. So don't freak out. Worst case, you just sometimes you'll have to hold down the power button, for 4 or 5 seconds until the system shuts down. Let it sit for a minute, then go ahead and power back up again. XTU should start up on its own when that happens and say it found a problem, it reset back to default values. If it doesn't, start up XTU yourself, and it'll have reset anyway. So, but really, it should only take 1 or 2 times of that happening until you find your sweet spot. So most users should be able to start with a minus 50 millivolt offset So go ahead and choose the -50. You can change it here, or you can change the slider. I just find it more accurate to use this thing here and easier. And once you do, you can see that any changes you made are going to make are highlighted in yellow on the side here. Then go ahead and click apply. Then you go ahead and stress test it for a while, see if it's stable. And then I would recommend using the built-in stress test, as well as something else like a utility called Prime 95 and the large FFTs. You'll understand that when you start it, it'll ask you what to do. That's a little bit more intense, but run both of those independently, not at the same time, for about 5 minutes each, and see if the system hangs. And if it's stable there, go and play some of your favorite games, run your intense apps, and also let the system idle, because sometimes the lower voltage will hang on idle even though it's stable at higher speeds. So basically give your system a throw test. Then once you get to make sure that's stable, then maybe drop another 20 millivolts, like -70. Go through the same thing, make sure it's stable, and then if that's good, keep dropping. I'd say maybe another 20 millivolts, -90. Once you get to a point where you hard lock up, reboot, blue screen, whatever, back off maybe 10 millivolts, and then keep doing that. And usually, even once I find once I've backed off, I find a stable spot, I still back off another 10 beyond that just to be safe. Any amount of undervolting will definitely be an improvement in cooling, as well as improved clock speed. So I know my system is stable at -90 for pretty much all intents and purposes, so I'm going to go ahead and set that now. And you will see the difference when I go to stress test. Go ahead and start testing. See, it's at 3.6, and with 4 cores, it should stay at 3.5. Why isn't it starting? Oh, there it goes. And it maintains, or last time, remember when we were at stock voltage, it was running at 3.2 gigahertz. It will maintain 3.5 gigahertz now, because the undervolt keeps it under TDP. And I'll run this just for a couple of seconds. And I've run this for 10 minutes or so, and for frequency pretty much maintained 3.5. Sometimes it might bounce down to 3.4 for a few seconds, but bounce back up to 3.5 for a while. So it's pretty stable at that clock speed with that undervolt. So there you have that. I'll go ahead and stop the testing. Alright, once you get it set how you want, and you may want to do this along the way just so that you don't lose your settings, and I will go ahead and, well, once you've got that set, you can start fussing with the multipliers. I would only worry about the 3 and 4 active cores, because that's really where you're going to encroach your TDP of the CPU. You can probably increase these even if you want for 1 or 2 cores, because it should stay under TDP, so you get faster, single thread, dual thread performance. But like for me, I typically keep these at 3 gigahertz for gaming, and even just for idle, because I don't need the power all the time. And actually for games even like Battlefield 3, which is pretty CPU hungry, I've run as low as 2.5 gigahertz, and I've been able to maintain about 60 frames per second still. So something to consider. And it will definitely, my CPU didn't exceed, I think, 75C during gaming, which is, at stock settings, it would come close to 100C in Battlefield 3. Sorry for the fuzzy picture, I don't know why it's so fuzzy today. But once you've got it set how you want, you can go ahead and go over to Profiles. Any changes you made, let's see here, we'll go ahead and apply. So, that's where we're at. Once you have it where you want, you can go ahead and click Save on the lower right, and up comes a dialog. Go ahead and save it to whatever you want, and then it'll be saved over in your profile section. Whenever you want to activate one, like we'll go back to default, go ahead and click Show Values, and you look over on the right, the difference from where it was applied to what that profile is will show up over here in yellow. And then just go ahead and click Apply. and bam, those settings are activated. So that's all you have to do. Just to show you, I'm back at stock settings with Prime 95. I'll show you it's a little bit more intense program. When you start up, it should give you the same menu. Otherwise, go under Options, Torture Test, In Place Large FFTs. It's got 8 threads, 4 cores plus 4 hyper threads. And we'll go ahead and look at the processor frequency. And whereas it was 3.1 or 3.2 with the XTU stress test, it's actually down to 2.8 with Prime 95. But again, we'll go ahead and stop this. Test, stop. When I go to my profile that I made, underclock, undervolt, show values, I pop up over here, go ahead and click apply. We'll do the same thing and go ahead and start Prime 95. And look over here, and actually a couple hundred megahertz faster in Prime 95 with the undervolt. Actually, it's underclocked. Duh, never mind. It's because I have it set to 3 gigahertz. We'll move it up to the stock 3.5. See what it can maintain. Well, it won't exceed 3 gigahertz still. So, in any case, it still does help by a little bit. And temps are remaining under 78C. So there you have that. I'll go ahead and stop the Prime 95 testing. Stop all workers, and bam. Okay. I am going to leave my voltage offset to the -90, leave my multipliers at stock, and I'm going to show you another app. This app is called Throttle Stop. This is this application, or whatever you want to call it, utility, has been around for, oops, I had it set to minimize the tray, several years, starting back, I think, even back to the Core 2 Duo days. And the user is Uncle Webb, and he's a user at MBR as well as other sites around the web, and he hosts this at the site Tech Inferno, and he's been kind enough to maintain this application in some limited form, and has made it useful for Haswell CPUs with this latest Throttle Stop 6.00 beta release, and doesn't have as much functionality as it did with the older processors, but still it has a lot of usefulness to it still. The things that you should consider are, let's see here, actually you can see the information here. This is your clock speed for all 8 of your cores, 4 cores plus 4 hyperthreads, and your CPU temperatures. And then when you start up for the first time, this BD proc hot will probably be highlighted. I don't think that matters one way or the other. I think it makes more sense. I think it actually was there for some issues with Asus laptops, but you're going to want CUNE and EIST, that's Intel Speed Step, activated so you can set your multipliers. So make sure that this set multiplier is set. Also, you can either make changes and say turn on, it'll make the changes, or it'll make it changes real time if you have it turned on. So you can see here we're set at 3 gigahertz. If I go up, you can see the clock speeds changing with whatever I set in this box here. Go down. The benefit of this program over XTU is that, well, XTU can tend to reset the settings after it comes out of sleep, or suspend a RAM mode, or if you have a slight hang or system crash. And so you really have to start up XTU every time you boot up your computer to see if the settings are still set or not, which is kind of annoying. And there's no real way to set up a batch file or anything that I know of to run at startup so that it just sets the settings that you want. You actually literally have to open the program and then check the settings. The only advantage XTU really has that I see is that it has voltage control. But if you're running at a lower clock speed, that's not as critical. It will still reduce your temps by a few degrees, but this is more flexible in that regard, because once you've got this set up how you want, you make sure you've got 4 different presets here: performance 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you have it how you want it, set it to the one that you want and go ahead and click save. It also has options so that you can set when you're on AC which profile you want, battery profile, and once you're at a certain battery percentage, it'll change the profile as well. So maybe you want it to drop the speed even significantly more to get more battery life, or just to make sure your system doesn't just power off on you. You can also have it start minimize and close, and in addition you can set up hotkeys for each profile and to turn it on and off too. You can also, if you want this to start with Windows, I don't believe it has an option to do that, but what I do is I just create a shortcut and then click and drag it into your start menu. Whether you have 7 or 8, it should be pretty much the same thing, but add it to your start menu to start when Windows starts up. And whatever options you have set here, like for example, if it's turned on now, it'll be turned on when you start up start up Throttle Stop. If you click turn off, and when you start up, it'll stay turned off. So just make sure that have that set to turned on. Now, the one thing that this can't do is change voltage. So it's a slight, I guess, compromise, but you get a lot more flexibility, and you give the option to set your multiplier. One thing is on battery though, I don't think, let me try that right now. Go to balanced mode, or maybe even power saver mode. Power saver. Your CPU will remain at that speed. So I guess it has one benefit is it will allow you to run faster than what the stock system will allow you, which is I think 1.2 gigahertz. On the other hand though, it won't downclock to that. It'll just maintain whatever multiplier you set in it. There's got to be a way to, I believe that there's a setting somewhere that you can set so that this still will change with whatever's in your power settings in Windows, but so far I haven't found it. So you may just want to fiddle with the options here with on battery, have it maybe reduce the power, or do it whatever you want. It's flexible, so you have that option. You should be able to turn it off and it should change too, but in any case, that's it for Throttle Stop and XTU, and I hope it helps you with reducing your temperatures. All right, good luck.